The morning sun barely pierced the tall glass windows of the federal courthouse, but the air inside was already thick with tension. Every seat in the courtroom was taken. Journalists craned their necks, cameras perched on tripods, microphones dangling like mechanical spiders over the sea of people. The smell of polished wood, old leather, and faint coffee lingered in the room, mixing with the sharp tang of anxiety. Today, 8-year-old Lily Carter would testify in a case that had gripped the city for months. Her mother's ex-boyfriend, Marcus Hale, stood accused of a string of crimes that had left families terrified. The small girl, no taller than the armrest of her mother's chair, clutched her mother's hand tightly. Her knuckles were white, trembling, as her mother whispered soft reassurances that barely reached the child's ears over the courtroom's murmurs. The judge, an older man with a lined face and a voice that carried authority without malice, called the court to order. "This court is now in session for the case of the state versus Marcus Hale," he announced, his tone steady but carrying the weight of anticipation. Hale sat at the defense table, his sharp eyes scanning the room, calculating. The faintest smirk played on his lips, like he was privy to some cruel joke that nobody else understood. His posture was too relaxed, his hands folded neatly, a stark contrast to the rest of the courtroom, where tension rippled in waves, nearly palpable. Lily sat at the witness chair, the smallest occupant of the grand courtroom. Her mother brushed back a strand of hair from her face, whispering again, "You're safe, baby, just tell the truth." Lily's eyes flickered toward the corner where Officer Daniels, a seasoned detective with a career spanning 15 years, stood silently. His partner, Rex, the German Shepherd K9 who had rescued Lily the night of the incident, sat near him, alert and motionless. Lily's gaze lingered on Rex, a flicker of relief crossing her young features. Somehow, amidst all the fear, the chaos, and the looming figure of Hale, the dog represented safety, protection, and truth. The prosecutor, a woman with sharp eyes and a commanding presence, rose from her seat. "Miss Carter, are you ready to testify?" she asked gently, leaning toward the girl, giving her an encouraging smile. Lily's lips trembled, but she nodded faintly, her small hands clutching the fabric of her dress. She rose slowly, her legs stiff, and took hesitant steps toward the witness stand. Each step seemed to echo through the silent courtroom, magnifying the tension. Cameras clicked. Journalists leaned forward. Every person in the room seemed to hold their breath. As Lily approached the stand, she faltered. Her legs threatened to give way beneath her. The defense attorney, a tall, imposing man with a meticulously groomed beard, rose, his voice slicing through the stillness. "Objection, Your Honor. The witness is clearly unable to continue at this time," he argued, his tone more theatrical than genuine concern. The judge, accustomed to theatrics, raised a hand for silence. "Sit, young lady. Take a deep breath. You may continue if you wish," he said, his eyes softening. Lily froze mid-step, her gaze darting toward Hale. His smirk had disappeared now, replaced by a thin line of irritation. He leaned slightly forward, his hands tightening around the edges of the table. She swallowed hard, feeling a lump in her throat, and then something unexpected happened. Her eyes shifted to Rex. The dog's gaze met hers, calm but unwavering. A surge of courage bolted through her small frame, and she took another step, then another, and finally she reached the witness stand. The courtroom watched, mesmerized. The weight of the moment pressed on everyone, the jurors, the spectators, even the officers present. Lily climbed onto the chair behind the stand, her small hands gripping the sides. She glanced at the prosecutor, who nodded encouragingly, and then at the defense table, where Hale's eyes were fixed on her like a predator tracking prey. The tension was so thick it could have been cut with a knife. "Please state your name for the court," the prosecutor asked. Lily's voice was barely audible, a tiny squeak. "L. Lily Carter," she said, her words quivering. A collective hush fell over the room. The jury leaned in. The spectators held their breaths. Hale's face betrayed a flicker of annoyance, but he quickly masked it with indifference. Lily's mother squeezed her hand tighter, whispering, "You can do this, baby." The prosecutor smiled gently. "Lily, can you tell the court what happened on the night of June 12th? Lily's eyes widened, her fingers curling around the edges of the stand. The memory of that night terrifying, violent, and confusing, came rushing back. She had been hiding under the broken dresser, trembling while Hale raged through the house. She had remembered every detail, the smell of smoke, the way he shouted at her mother, the sound of glass shattering, and the panic in her own chest. Her lips quivered. She began, then stopped, a wave of fear washing over her. The courtroom grew quiet again, sensing her hesitation. Rex let out a low, reassuring whine, stepping slightly forward. Lily's eyes met his, and a spark ignited. She inhaled sharply and forced herself to continue. "He hurt my mom, and then he tried to get me." Her voice broke, tears forming at the corners of her eyes. The prosecutor leaned closer, her expression soft but focused. "Can you tell the court what happened next?" Lily nodded, swallowing hard. She looked toward the corner where Rex sat, her small finger trembling as she pointed at him. "Rex, he saved me," she whispered, her voice cracking. A murmur spread through the courtroom. Journalists whispered into their microphones. Spectators gasped. Hale's face turned pale, and for the first time his smirk faltered. His attorney's hand shot up to object, but before he could speak, Lily's words rang out again, soft but firm. "He was there. And he wouldn't let him get me." The courtroom went silent. The judge's eyes widened. Officer Daniels felt a lump in his throat. Even the jury seemed frozen, the weight of a child's testimony pressing down on them. Lily's mother buried her face in her hands, shaking. Hale leaned back, his jaw tight, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The man had believed he could intimidate a child, silence her, erase his crimes from the world. But now, the very presence of Rex, the police dog who had become Lily's protector, threatened to undo him in a way he had never anticipated. Lily straightened in the chair, pointing at Rex again. Her whisper grew slightly louder, more confident. "He saved me from him." Her gaze shifted toward Hale, who suddenly looked small and vulnerable under the intensity of her eyes. The room seemed to shrink, the walls closing in. The spectators, the jurors, even the officers felt it. The balance had shifted. A small girl, 8 years old, had done what no one thought possible. She had summoned courage from somewhere deep inside, aided by a dog whose loyalty knew no fear. Hale's attorney jumped to his feet, shouting, "Objection!" leading the witness. The judge banged his gavel, demanding order, but the tension had already reached a boiling point. Every eye in the courtroom was on Lily. The cameras outside clicked furiously, capturing the moment that would soon dominate news feeds. The world was witnessing something extraordinary, a child speaking truth to power, aided by an unlikely hero in fur. Lily's hand slipped slightly as she pointed at Rex, but she held her ground. Her whisper, barely audible, echoed through the silent courtroom. "He knows everything." A shiver ran through Hale. He had underestimated her. He had assumed a child could be intimidated, silenced, or ignored. But now the courtroom knew the truth. This was no ordinary trial. This was the moment when a small girl and a police dog had begun to unravel the lies, fear, and cruelty that had haunted her family. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Miss Carter, are you asking the court to consider Rex's presence as part of your testimony?" he asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Lily nodded, gripping Rex's collar gently. The dog sat obediently, ears perked, watching the man who had caused so much fear. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. Everyone realized that what was about to unfold could change everything: testimony, evidence, and perhaps even the outcome of the trial itself. Lily's small voice trembled as she continued, He tried to hide things, but Rex, he found me." The air in the room seemed to tighten. Hale's fingers curled around the edge of the table. His smirk was gone. For the first time, the predator felt fear. The jury leaned forward. Reporters scribbled furiously. The gallery whispered among themselves. This was no ordinary testimony. This was the beginning of a revelation that would shake the courtroom to its core. And then, in the midst of silence, Lily did something no one expected. She stepped off the witness stand and walked toward Rex. Every step was deliberate, defiant, and small, but it carried a weight that no one could ignore. Spectators gasped. Journalists held their breath. Hale's eyes widened in disbelief. The courtroom watched as the child approached the dog who had been her savior and pointed firmly at him once more, whispering words that no one could ignore. He knows. In that moment, the entire room felt the shift. The balance had changed. A child had found her voice, a dog had taken his place as protector and witness, and a predator realized he had underestimated both. The trial was no longer about what could be argued. It was about truth, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a girl and the dog who saved her life. And with that, the first crack in Hale's carefully constructed facade appeared, invisible to the eye but undeniable in the hearts of everyone present. The courtroom held its breath as Lily moved closer to Rex. Every eye followed her small, trembling frame, and a collective murmur rose as spectators realized this was no ordinary testimony. Her mother gasped softly, fingers gripping the armrest like a lifeline. Officer Daniels felt his chest tighten, his heart hammering against his ribs as he watched the child he had rescued just months earlier approach the dog who had saved her. Rex, ever vigilant, remained perfectly still, ears pointed, eyes sharp. The connection between the girl and the dog was palpable, a silent language forged in fear and survival, and every person in that room felt it like an electric current. Lily knelt beside Rex, her hands brushing against his thick black fur. The dog leaned into her touch, nudging her cheek gently with his nose. Her lips trembled and she swallowed hard before looking at the jury with a courage far beyond her years. "He saved me," she whispered again, but this time the words were firmer, carrying weight and truth. "He saved me from him." A shiver ran through the courtroom. Hale's face drained of color. His carefully rehearsed confidence faltered, replaced by a flicker of panic. He had counted on fear to control this child, assuming that a small girl could be intimidated by the courtroom, the spectators, even the police dog. But here she was, defiant, her trust in Rex anchoring her bravery. The prosecutor, standing a few feet away, leaned forward, her voice calm but forceful. "Lily, can you tell us what Rex did that night?" Lily nodded, her small hands gripping Rex's collar as if holding onto her courage. She drew in a shaky breath and the words came in a whisper at first. He wouldn't let him get me. He barked, he growled. He stayed right there until they came." The memories flooded her, the terror of that night overwhelming, but the presence of Rex steadied her. Officer Daniels' throat tightened. He had been there. He remembered the frantic barks, the way Rex had lunged toward the locked door, the way the dog had stayed between him and the danger until backup arrived. That dog had saved her life, and now, in the courtroom, his heroic actions were being recounted with the clarity and innocence only a child could convey. The jurors leaned forward, eyes wide. They had never seen a witness like this. Not a child, not a dog, not a combination of both that carried the power to sway a room with a glance, a whisper, a gesture. Hale's attorney, desperate to regain control, jumped to his feet. "Your Honor, this is highly prejudicial. The dog's presence is influencing the witness." The judge, calm but attentive, raised a hand. "Order in the court," he commanded. Then, turning toward Lily, he asked softly, "Miss Carter, are you feeling safe to continue?" Lily nodded, her fingers tightening around Rex's collar. "Yes," she whispered, barely audible. Then, in a voice that carried to the back of the room, she said, "He knows everything. He saw everything. He won't let anyone hurt me." Hale's lips pressed into a thin line. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as the room erupted in whispers. This wasn't supposed to happen. The child was supposed to be scared. She was supposed to crumble under pressure. Instead, she had become untouchable, bolstered by the presence of a dog trained to protect and fearless in its loyalty. The prosecutor walked closer to the stand, kneeling slightly so she was at Lily's eye level. "Lily, can you tell us what Marcus did?" The child hesitated, blinking rapidly. Her eyes flicked to Rex, who pressed his head against her shoulder. She drew in a shaky breath, and then the words came, small but unwavering. He yelled, he broke things, he tried to make me go with him. I was hiding and I thought I was going to die." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. A few jurors covered their mouths, stunned by the detail and the emotion in her words. Hale's attorney shot up, waving his hands. "Objection!" leading the witness. The judge banged his gavel. "Sustained," he said firmly, but no one could ignore the shift in the room. The balance had tilted. The predator's carefully constructed facade was cracking, and the child, backed by the unwavering loyalty of a dog, was the hammer. Lily's mother pressed her hand to her chest, tears pooling in her eyes. She whispered softly, "You're so brave, baby." Lily nodded, still clutching Rex. Her eyes never left Hale. Something had changed in her posture. Where fear had once dominated, determination now stood. And in the corner of the courtroom, Rex seemed to sense it too. His tail wagged slightly, a subtle signal of encouragement. Then Lily did something unexpected. She pointed at Hale with her free hand, her voice rising just enough to cut through the murmurs. He tried to hide things. He tried to make sure no one would know. But Rex, he found me. And now everyone will know. The courtroom erupted. Spectators gasped. Reporters clicked cameras rapidly, capturing every moment. The jurors leaned forward, transfixed. Even the judge paused, pen hovering above his notes, struck by the gravity of the child's words. Hale's smirk had vanished. His face twisted in a mixture of anger and panic. He could feel the walls closing in. Officer Daniels stepped slightly forward, standing beside Rex, his hand resting lightly on the dog's collar. He remembered the night vividly, the barking, the growls, the chaos of trying to break down the locked door. He had thought then that the child was terrified beyond reason, but she had survived. And now here in this grand courtroom she was fearless. Lily's voice grew firmer. "He thought he could scare me, but he didn't know Rex was here. He didn't know I would tell." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. The jurors shifted in their seats, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. Hale's attorney's face was pale, his objections faltering in the wake of Lily's raw, unfiltered courage. Then, in a move that stunned everyone, Lily stepped down from the witness stand. Small, determined steps carried her toward Rex. The judge leaned forward, intrigued. The spectators whispered frantically. Cameras swiveled. The child who had been silent for so long now commanded the room with a single act, moving toward the dog who had been her shield, her protector, her savior. When she reached Rex, she knelt beside him and pressed her forehead to his neck. A whisper escaped her lips, barely audible, but it resonated through the courtroom as though carrying the weight of the entire night. "He saved me. He won't let him hurt me again." Hale's eyes widened in disbelief. His world, carefully curated and controlled, had started to unravel in ways he could not comprehend. The power dynamic had shifted. A small girl, backed by a loyal dog, had become the force he could not anticipate, a living witness who could testify not just in words but in presence, in courage, and in truth. The courtroom remained frozen. Spectators sat on the edge of their seats. Reporters whispered into microphones, capturing every detail. The jurors were silent, absorbing the profound shift in the case's momentum. The judge's eyes narrowed slightly, recognizing that what was unfolding before him was far beyond a typical child's testimony. This was a moment that could define the trial, change the outcome, and leave a permanent mark on everyone present. And then Lily slowly lifted her head, her small hands gripping Rex's fur. Her lips parted and she whispered again, louder this time, "He knows everything, and now so does everyone else." A hush fell over the room. Hale's attorney flinched. Hale himself looked as though the air had been knocked out of him. The smirk that had once been his armor was gone. The courtroom had shifted from ordinary proceedings to a stage where a child and a dog were the protagonists, wielding a power that no adult had anticipated. Officer Daniels exhaled slowly, relief mixing with awe. He had trained for high-stress situations, faced violent criminals, and witnessed chaos beyond imagination. But nothing compared to this. A child standing firm, backed by a K9 companion whose loyalty transcended fear, exposing the truth in the most cinematic of ways. The judge's gavel finally came down, demanding order, but the room remained charged. The energy was electric, a mixture of fear, admiration, and suspense. Lily's mother dabbed at her eyes, proud and terrified in equal measure. The jury, wide-eyed and silent, seemed to understand that the child's testimony, aided by Rex, had become the turning point of the trial. And then, with every eye locked on the girl and the dog, Lily took a deep breath and whispered something that no one could ignore. "He tried, but he couldn't hide anything from us." The courtroom went silent, and for a heartbeat, the world held its breath. No one moved. No one spoke. Hale's eyes darted around, searching for a lifeline that didn't exist. The tiny girl and the K-9 companion had become an unstoppable force. The courtroom had been buzzing moments ago, but now an uneasy stillness had settled. The judge called a short recess to allow the young witness a moment to compose herself. Lily's mother scooped her into her arms, holding her tight as if she could shield her from the weight of the courtroom and the world. "It's okay, baby. You're safe," she whispered, her voice quivering. But even as she spoke, the memories came rushing back for both of them, vivid, unrelenting, and terrifying. Officer Daniels watched from the corner, his eyes never leaving Lily. He remembered the night he had first met her, the night Hale's threats had become actions, a night that could have ended in tragedy. The call had come in just after midnight, a frantic neighbor reporting screams and the sound of breaking glass. Daniels had arrived with his team, the city streets silent under the dim glow of streetlights. The house at the end of Willow Lane loomed like a dark fortress, windows reflecting nothing but shadows. He could still recall the first bark, low and urgent, that had cut through the silence. Rex, his partner for years, had sensed something far more dangerous than anyone realized. The dog had charged forward, nose to the ground, ears erect, tracking every movement inside. Daniels had followed closely behind, his heart pounding, adrenaline screaming through his veins. Every step toward that house had felt heavier than the last. Every creak of the wooden floorboards had sounded like a gunshot in his mind. When they finally burst into the house, chaos erupted. Furniture lay in ruin, pictures torn from walls, a broken vase littering the floor like shattered glass dreams. Hale had been furious, his eyes wild, the room vibrating with his rage. But then Daniels heard it, a small whimper, faint but unmistakable, coming from the back room. He ran, Rex at his heels, barking frantically, alerting them to the presence of someone in danger. Lily had been huddled under a broken dresser, her tiny body shaking, eyes wide with terror. She had watched Hale move like a shadow, his anger indiscriminate, his intentions terrifyingly clear. The fear in her eyes had pierced Daniel's chest. "Don't let him find me," she had whispered when he pulled her out. And in that moment, everything had crystallized, the stakes, the danger, and the bravery required to survive. Back in the courtroom, Lily's small body trembled as she relived these moments. She had never spoken much since that night. Words had been difficult, heavy, laden with memories too raw for a child to carry alone. And yet here she was, standing, kneeling beside Rex, whispering truths that held the courtroom captive. Her voice, fragile but resolute, carried the weight of survival. He tried to get me," she said, staring at Hale, who sat frozen in disbelief. The prosecutor stepped closer, leaning down to meet her gaze. "Lily, can you tell us what happened next?" Her eyes flicked to Rex, who remained steadfast at her side. She drew in a shaky breath and the words tumbled out. "I hid, I didn't move. I tried to be quiet, but he came in and I thought he would hurt me." Her voice broke and tears ran down her cheeks. The jury sat in stunned silence, the weight of the child's words hanging heavy in the room. Daniel's chest tightened as he remembered the next moments of that night. Rex had lunged forward, teeth bared, growling with a ferocity that only a dog who understood true danger could muster. Hale had been momentarily stunned, distracted, giving Daniels the window he needed to reach Lily. He had grabbed her small hand, pulling her toward safety, while Rex kept the man at bay with relentless barks and strategic lunges. The memory replayed in his mind like a slow-motion nightmare, the adrenaline and fear mingling with relief. Lily's mother whispered to her daughter, brushing the hair from her tear-streaked face. "You're so brave," she said softly, her voice shaking. Lily nodded, clinging to Rex, who nudged her gently, reassuring her. Even in the courtroom, the bond forged in fear and survival remained palpable, unbroken by time or distance. Then, with the memory still fresh, Lily's words grew firmer. He broke things, he yelled, and I thought he would get me. Her finger trembled as she pointed toward Hale, who leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, eyes narrowing. The courtroom shifted as if the very air carried the fear and urgency of that night. The defense attorney sprang to his feet. "Your Honor, this is hearsay and highly prejudicial. The witness—" "Sit down," the judge interrupted, his gavel striking with authority. "Allow the witness to finish. This is her testimony." Lily swallowed hard, tears streaming down her face. She took a deep breath, leaning closer to Rex, who pressed his massive head against her shoulder. "I was hiding under the dresser, and I thought no one would find me. But Rex, he found me. He stayed with me until everyone came." A gasp swept through the courtroom. Spectators leaned forward, jurors exchanged tense glances, and the media scribbled furiously. Hale's face went pale. The reality he had tried so hard to control, the truth, was now being laid bare by an 8-year-old child and a police dog. His carefully constructed image of dominance and intimidation crumbled, a brittle facade under the weight of courage and loyalty. Officer Daniels exhaled slowly, feeling the adrenaline still coursing through him. That night had been chaotic, terrifying, and surreal. Every sound, every movement had been magnified by fear. Yet now, months later, seeing Lily recount it with clarity and determination, he felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. This child had survived horrors no one should endure, and she had emerged not just alive but unbroken, strengthened by a bond with a dog that had become her protector, witness, and friend. The prosecutor's voice softened, coaxing Lily forward. "Lily, can you tell the court what Marcus did after you were found?" Lily's small frame shivered and she drew in a deep breath. Her voice was barely audible, but each word resonated with unflinching truth. He tried to hide things. He didn't want anyone to know." Her eyes locked onto Hale, unwavering. "But Rex, he saw everything, and he won't let anyone hurt me again." The courtroom erupted. Hale's attorney's objections fell flat, his protests drowned out by the weight of the child's testimony. Journalists clicked their cameras incessantly, capturing every movement, every expression. Spectators leaned forward, drawn into the intensity of the moment. The jurors sat frozen, absorbing the courage and precision of a child who had witnessed trauma and yet had the strength to recount it, aided by a loyal companion who understood danger more instinctively than any human could. Hale's face had gone pale. His confidence had vanished entirely, replaced by fear, frustration, and disbelief. He had underestimated not only the child's resilience, but also the presence of Rex, the dog who had become the embodiment of justice, protection, and unwavering loyalty. Every bark, every nudge, every attentive gaze of the K9 reminded him that the child was not alone, that she had an ally he could not intimidate or threaten. Lily's mother whispered, her voice trembling, "You're so strong, baby. You've always been so brave." Lily nodded, her fingers brushing against Rex's fur. The dog responded with a gentle nudge, a silent affirmation of protection and solidarity. The room, tense and charged, seemed to shrink around them. The audience felt the unspoken power dynamic, a child, a dog, and the truth standing firm against fear and manipulation. Then Lily did something that sent a chill through the courtroom. She stood, small but unwavering, and took a step forward. Another, each movement deliberate, fearless. She approached Rex, and as she knelt beside him, she whispered words that carried the weight of months of fear, trauma, and survival. "He tried, but he couldn't win. Rex was here, and I'm not afraid." The courtroom fell silent. Spectators held their breath. The jury leaned forward, captivated by the moment. Hale's attorney froze, unable to formulate words. Hale himself sat motionless, his smirk gone, replaced by the first signs of genuine fear. Officer Daniels exhaled, proud and relieved, witnessing the child he had saved now facing her past with courage and the unwavering presence of her canine protector. Lily lifted her head, eyes shimmering with unshed tears, and whispered one final phrase that resonated through the silent courtroom. He knows, and now, so does everyone else. A tremor of realization ran through the courtroom. The predator's carefully maintained control had been shattered. A child's voice, small but resolute, backed by the instinctive loyalty of a K-9 companion, had begun to unravel the lies, fear, and manipulation that had haunted her life. The entire room understood in that moment that this trial would never be ordinary. The courtroom remained charged, a palpable tension pressing down like the humid weight of a summer storm. Spectators leaned forward in their seats, holding their breath as 8-year-old Lily Carter knelt beside Rex, her small hands clutching the dog's thick fur. Hale's face was pale, his previous smirk vanished entirely, replaced by a thin line of disbelief. For the first time, the predator who had terrorized her family seemed utterly unprepared for the courage radiating from a child. Every eye in the room was fixed on Lily, witnessing a performance of bravery that transcended age. The judge's gavel came down softly, calling the courtroom to attention. "Miss Carter, are you ready to continue your testimony?" he asked, his voice gentle but firm. Lily straightened slightly, her lips quivering, but her gaze remained unwavering. She nodded and in a small but confident voice replied, "Yes, Your Honor." Her hand rested on Rex's collar, drawing comfort and strength from the animal who had become her shield and anchor. The prosecutor moved closer, maintaining eye contact with the girl. "Lily, you told the court about the night you were in danger. Can you tell us if there's anything else we should know, anything that might help us understand what happened?" Lily hesitated, a flicker of fear crossing her eyes, but then she met Hale's gaze. He had leaned back in his chair, hands folded, trying to project control, but the calm she projected challenged him. She took a deep breath and whispered, "There's something he tried to hide, something in his house." A murmur rose in the courtroom. Spectators exchanged glances. The jurors leaned forward. Even the officers standing silently by felt a shiver. Hale's attorney immediately jumped to his feet, shouting, "Objection! This is speculative. The witness is being led." The judge, calm but attentive, raised a hand. "Overruled. The witness may continue," he said. The courtroom fell silent again, the atmosphere electric. Everyone understood that this small child was about to reveal something crucial, something Hale did not want anyone to know. Lily's finger trembled as she pointed toward Hale. Her voice, though soft, carried the weight of conviction. In his basement, he hid things he didn't want anyone to see, things that could hurt people. The words landed like a bomb. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The jury shifted in their seats, leaning closer. The spectators whispered frantically. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras clicking. Hale's face drained of color. He hadn't anticipated this. No one had. The child's revelation exposed cracks in the fortress of control he had built around himself. The prosecutor leaned forward, her expression firm yet empathetic. "Lily, do you know what's in the basement?" Lily's eyes flicked to Rex, who pressed his head gently against her shoulder, as if encouraging her. She swallowed hard, tears glimmering in her eyes, and whispered, "I don't know everything, but I know it's dangerous." He wanted to hide it so nobody would find out. Hale's jaw tightened. Panic flickered in his eyes, his attempts to mask fear faltering. The room sensed the shift. The predator who had once seemed untouchable was now vulnerable, exposed by the courage of a child and the silent, unwavering loyalty of a police dog. Officer Daniels exhaled, his hand resting lightly on Rex's collar. He remembered that night, the chaos, the fear, and the moments of uncertainty. Rex had been more than a partner. He had been a guardian, a lifeline, a force of nature that refused to allow harm to come to Lily. Seeing the bond now and hearing her recount the memory, Daniels felt a surge of pride. She had survived. She was not broken. And now she was standing firm in the courtroom, unafraid. The judge leaned forward, his gaze intent. "Miss Carter, can you tell us how you know he's hiding these things?" Lily's voice quivered but grew stronger with each word. I saw him moving things at night. He told me not to tell, but Rex, he didn't let it happen. He stayed with me. He knows what's there." Her eyes locked onto Hale's, unwavering. "He's been hiding things from everyone but not from me, and now I want everyone to know." A gasp swept through the courtroom. Spectators covered their mouths, whispering to each other. The jurors exchanged incredulous glances. The prosecutor nodded subtly, recognizing the gravity of the testimony. Hale's attorney stood, flustered. "Objection! The witness is speculating. This is inadmissible." The judge's gavel came down sharply. "Overruled. The witness is recounting first-hand observations," he said. The courtroom fell into tense silence again. The words hung heavy in the air, the weight of impending revelation pressing on everyone present. Lily's mother wrapped her arms around her daughter instinctively, holding her close yet allowing her to stand firm. "You're so brave, baby," she whispered. Lily's hands remained on Rex, drawing courage from the steady presence of her protector. Then, in a move that shocked the courtroom, Lily stood fully upright, stepping closer to Rex and pointed deliberately toward Hale. Her voice, small but unwavering, carried across the room. He thought nobody would find out, but Rex, he saw everything. And now everyone else will see too. Hale's face went pale. The confidence he had relied upon was eroding. He realized for the first time that the child could not be intimidated, that her words, her memories, and her bond with the dog were a force he could not control. His carefully rehearsed plan of fear and silence was collapsing. Officer Daniels exhaled slowly, his heart still racing from the memories of the night. Every detail, every moment was now amplified in the courtroom. The chaos of that night, the shattered furniture, the frantic barks, the terror in Lily's eyes, was no longer confined to memory. It was alive, unfolding before the eyes of everyone present. The prosecutor stepped closer, her voice firm but compassionate. "Lily, is there anything else you want the court to know?" Lily's small frame quivered, tears running down her cheeks. She looked at Rex, who nudged her gently, grounding her, and whispered, He tried to scare me, but I'm not scared now." The courtroom went silent. Every person present, spectator, juror, officer, reporter, felt the intensity of the moment. Hale's attorney, desperate, tried one last attempt to regain control. "Your Honor, this is—" "Silence," the judge commanded. His eyes softened as he looked at Lily. "Finish your testimony, Miss Carter." Lily drew a deep breath, her gaze unwavering. He thought he could hide things forever, but he couldn't. "And I want everyone to know the truth. Rex was there, and he won't let anyone hurt me again." The courtroom erupted in whispers. The jurors leaned forward, captivated. Spectators exchanged glances of awe and disbelief. Reporters frantically documented every word. Hale sat frozen, pale and powerless. The predator had finally been unmasked, cornered not by a lawyer but by a child and her dog. Then Lily stepped forward, kneeling beside Rex once more. She pressed her cheek against his fur, whispering words that carried through the room with the weight of unshakable truth. "He tried, but he couldn't win. Rex was here, and I'm not afraid." The energy in the courtroom shifted. The predator's confidence had crumbled, replaced by a mixture of anger, fear, and disbelief. Officer Daniels felt a lump in his throat. The child he had rescued months ago had transformed fear into courage, trauma into testimony, and a bond with a loyal dog into an unstoppable force for justice. The judge exhaled, allowing a brief pause. The jury seemed to collectively hold their breath. The spectators were frozen, caught in a moment of cinematic intensity rarely seen in any courtroom. Hale's attorney looked around, frantic and cornered. Hale himself remained seated, his hands trembling slightly, realizing that the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. Lily lifted her head, her small voice resolute. "He knows, and now everyone else will know too." Every eye in the room felt the weight of that statement. The predator had underestimated the bravery of a child and the unyielding loyalty of a dog. The courtroom had become a stage where courage, truth, and justice stood unshakable, ready to dismantle years of lies and fear. The courtroom was charged with anticipation. The moment Lily had pointed to Hale and mentioned the hidden basement, a ripple of unease had spread through everyone present. Prosecutors and jurors alike leaned forward, their attention undivided. Spectators whispered nervously, cameras clicked furiously, and even the seasoned officers standing guard felt the weight of a secret about to be revealed. Hale, once seemingly untouchable, now sat rigid, jaw tight, eyes darting between the judge, the jury, and the child who had so unexpectedly turned the tide of the trial against him. The prosecutor cleared her throat, her voice controlled but firm. "Miss Carter, you've told us about what happened in your home that night. You mentioned that Marcus Hale hid something in his basement. Can you explain what you saw?" Lily's small hands gripped Rex's collar as she took a deep, steadying breath. I saw him carrying boxes, heavy boxes. He told me to stay in my room, but I could hear things. I could hear him moving things. He said nobody could see what was in them, but I know it was important and dangerous." A gasp swept across the courtroom. Journalists jotted down notes frantically. Spectators whispered among themselves. The jury's eyes were fixed on Lily, every juror understanding that the testimony was about to escalate the case to an entirely new level. Hale's attorney leapt to his feet, his face pale. "Objection! Speculation! The witness cannot testify to things she did not personally handle or verify." The judge's gavel struck sharply, demanding silence. "Overruled. The witness is describing her direct observations. Proceed." The courtroom fell silent again, anticipation thick in the air. Lily's mother gripped her daughter's arm, whispering softly, "You're brave, baby, just the truth." Lily nodded slightly, her gaze unwavering, but a shadow of fear crossed her face. She knew the basement held secrets far worse than anyone could imagine, and somehow she felt compelled to reveal them. Officer Daniels shifted uncomfortably. He had already submitted a thorough search of Hale's house months ago, but Lily's words suggested there was something more, a hidden element no one had yet uncovered. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. Rex leaned against Lily, sensing her apprehension, his presence an unspoken reassurance that she was not alone. The prosecutor, sensing the significance of the moment, leaned forward. "Lily, can you tell us anything specific about the basement? Anything that might help the officers locate what he tried to hide?" Lily's lips trembled. I don't know everything, but I know he put things in a big trunk. It was heavy, locked, and he didn't want anyone to open it. He said it was nobody's business, but Rex, he could sense it was bad. He wouldn't leave me alone when I was scared. He protected me." The courtroom reacted instantly. Spectators leaned forward. Journalists snapped photos, recording every movement. Hale's face drained of color. His eyes widened as the implications of Lily's testimony sank in. He had thought months of careful concealment and intimidation would keep the truth hidden. Yet here, an 8-year-old girl and a dog he could not control were unraveling everything he had worked to suppress. The judge motioned for calm. "Officer Daniels, do you believe this information is actionable?" Daniels nodded slightly. "Yes, Your Honor. If Miss Carter's observations are correct, there may be evidence in the basement that has been overlooked. I would recommend a follow-up search warrant immediately." A hush fell over the courtroom. The spectators, jurors, and even the media realized the gravity of the statement. The story was no longer just a child's testimony. It was a guide to uncovering potential evidence that could decisively impact the case. Hale's jaw clenched as he realized that this revelation could leave him completely exposed. Lily's voice, though small, rang with conviction. He tried to hide things that were dangerous. I don't know what they are, but Rex knows. He wouldn't let anything happen to me." She gently patted Rex's neck, who leaned into her touch, his eyes alert and unwavering. The bond between child and dog radiated in the courtroom, a tangible force that seemed to shield her from the predator at the defense table. Hale's attorney, desperate to regain control, shouted, "Objection! This is prejudicial. The witness is attempting to sway the jury without presenting evidence." The judge banged his gavel. "Overruled. The witness is providing relevant testimony regarding her first-hand knowledge of the events. Continue." The tension in the courtroom thickened. Hale's face had gone from pale to ashen. Every muscle in his body seemed rigid, as if bracing for the inevitable exposure of his secrets. The jurors sat forward in their seats, their attention riveted. Even the spectators, some clutching each other's hands, could feel the suspense ripple through the room. The prosecutor leaned closer to Lily. "Miss Carter, would you be able to identify the location if the officers went to the house?" Lily nodded, her small voice steady. "Yes, I remember the basement door. It's in the corner near the stairs, and the trunk, it's black, heavy, and locked. He said no one could see it." Daniels exchanged a meaningful glance with his partner. It matched what he had feared. The initial searches had missed something crucial, concealed with intent. And now, guided by the child's memory and the dog's instincts, the path forward was clear. The courtroom buzzed as the implications settled in. Spectators whispered, cameras clicked, and the jurors exchanged tense glances. Hale's attorney stammered, trying to intervene, but the momentum had shifted irreversibly. The predator who had intimidated, threatened, and manipulated now faced a child whose courage had outmatched him, backed by a K-9 witness whose loyalty was absolute. Lily's mother whispered softly, encouraging her daughter, "You're doing the right thing. You're so brave." Lily nodded, her small fingers brushing Rex's fur for comfort and strength. She knew what came next would expose the full truth of that terrifying night. Then Lily looked directly at Hale, her small frame unflinching. He thought nobody would find it, but Rex, he saw everything. And now, everyone will see too. Gasps echoed across the courtroom. The jurors leaned forward, riveted. Spectators whispered frantically. The tension was so thick it could almost be sliced through with a knife. Hale's face had drained of all color, and his previously composed demeanor had crumbled completely. His carefully orchestrated world of secrecy and control was disintegrating before the eyes of everyone present. Officer Daniels made a quiet note to proceed with immediate action. The information Lily had provided could lead directly to evidence that would solidify the case. He glanced at Rex, whose eyes were locked on Hale, unwavering, a silent guardian of the truth. The dog's presence alone seemed to embolden the child, giving her courage to continue despite the overwhelming pressure. The prosecutor turned to the judge, her tone professional yet urgent. "Your Honor, given the witness's testimony, I request that we obtain a search warrant for the basement immediately. There is a strong likelihood of evidence that may further prove the defendant's guilt." The judge nodded. "Request granted. Officers, proceed immediately. The jury will remain in session, and the witness may remain for further testimony as needed." Hale's attorney sat down, pale and defeated. Hale himself remained rigid, eyes fixed on Lily, realizing that every moment now worked against him. The child had not only survived but had begun unraveling the predator's carefully constructed web of lies. Lily exhaled softly, her fingers still gripping Rex's fur. The bond between them was unshakable, a lifeline that had carried her through fear, trauma, and now public testimony. "Rex, we're safe now," she whispered. The dog nudged her hand gently, responding as if understanding every word. The courtroom remained tense as officers prepared to follow up on Lily's revelation. Every step they took toward the truth, guided by a child's courage and a dog's instincts, brought the case closer to a conclusion that Hale had desperately tried to avoid. The air was thick with suspense, each moment a heartbeat closer to exposure, accountability, and justice. The moment the search warrant was signed, the tension in the courtroom became nearly unbearable. Spectators and jurors alike waited in silence, their eyes glued to every motion. Officer Daniels led a small team to Hale's house, the memory of the night still vivid in his mind. the chaos, the fear, and most importantly, the child and the dog who had survived it all. Now, guided by Lily's testimony, he felt the weight of imminent discovery pressing on him. Every step down the quiet streets toward Willow Lane carried the gravity of uncovering secrets long hidden. When the team arrived, the house loomed dark and silent under the pale glow of the morning sun. Hale's presence inside was a distant echo, a shadow of the threat that had once terrorized a child. The officers approached cautiously, their radios quiet, instincts on high alert. Rex padded ahead, alert and focused, ears pointed, nose twitching, guiding them toward the basement door Lily had described. Daniels knelt beside the handle, glancing at Rex. The dog barked softly, a signal, almost as if reminding the officer that the child's observations had been precise. Slowly, carefully, Daniels turned the knob. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit staircase descending into shadow. The smell of dust and damp wood filled the air. Every officer moved deliberately, flashlights cutting through darkness, illuminating each step as they descended. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement stretched out like a cold, hidden chamber. Shelves lined the walls, boxes stacked neatly, and in the corner, exactly where Lily had remembered, stood a large, black trunk. Its surface was scratched and worn, and the lock gleamed ominously under the flashlight beams. Daniels' gloved hand rested briefly on Rex's head before he carefully examined the trunk. It was heavier than it looked, the kind of weight that hinted at something significant inside. Rex sat beside the trunk, growling softly, alert to every shadow, every movement. The officers exchanged glances. The child's testimony had been accurate. This trunk had been deliberately hidden, carefully guarded, and now it stood as the key to unearthing Hale's secrets. Daniels retrieved the lock-picking kit, working quickly but methodically. Seconds stretched into eternities as the team waited, tension coiling tightly in the basement like a living thing. Finally, with a subtle click, the lock gave way. Daniels lifted the lid, revealing the contents inside, and immediately a collective gasp echoed through the room. The trunk contained stacks of documents, photographs, and several electronic devices. Some papers were labeled with dates and names, others marked with cryptic codes. But one item, wrapped carefully in a cloth, drew Daniels' attention. The object itself radiated danger, a tangible reminder of the threats Lily had feared. He carefully pulled it out and unwrapped it, revealing a collection of tools and items that had been used in Hale's schemes, threatening letters, forged documents, and a notebook detailing plans of intimidation and manipulation. The meticulous organization suggested premeditation, but the most chilling discovery was a small box containing devices designed to monitor and control, hidden cameras, audio recorders, and other implements of surveillance. Each piece told a story of a predator obsessed with control, secrecy, and fear. Rex growled softly, his eyes never leaving the trunk. Daniels felt a shiver run down his spine. The dog had sensed the danger the entire time, had guided them to it, and now the evidence validated every instinct, every protective action Rex had taken during that harrowing night. The realization struck him deeply. Without this dog, without Lily's courage, these items might have remained hidden indefinitely. Daniels radioed the courtroom, providing a brief update. "Judge, we've secured the basement. Items discovered consistent with witness testimony will need further processing and verification." The judge nodded over the line, his tone calm but aware of the gravity of the moment. In the courtroom, the jurors murmured among themselves, sensing that the climax of the case was approaching. Back in the basement, Daniels and his team carefully documented every item, photographing each piece, tagging it for evidence. Rex remained vigilant, moving around the room in precise, calculated patrols, ensuring that no detail was overlooked. The dog's presence was a stabilizing force for the officers as much as it had been for Lily months earlier. Then Daniels opened the notebook. The pages contained meticulously written accounts, detailed descriptions of the nights Hale had terrorized his victims, notes on surveillance of Lily's home, and records of manipulations intended to silence witnesses. Each page was more damning than the last, a record of a predator who had calculated fear into every action. Daniel's stomach churned as he realized just how close they had come to disaster. Without Lily's memory and Rex's instinct, the full scope of Hale's danger might never have been exposed. Officer Patel, standing nearby, whispered, This is worse than we thought." Daniels nodded grimly, flipping through the photographs. Some showed broken locks, some captured threatening gestures, and others documented the precise methods Hale had used to instill terror. Every page, every photo was a testament to the deliberate, methodical cruelty of a man who had underestimated the courage of a child and the loyalty of a dog. Rex nudged Daniel's hand gently, a reminder that the dog had been there through it all. Daniels looked down at the dog and felt an overwhelming surge of gratitude. The K9 had not just saved a life, it had guided them to the very evidence that would ensure justice. Rex's growl, low and measured, seemed to echo the sentiment. We protect the innocent. We find the truth. Meanwhile, in the courtroom, the anticipation reached a fever pitch. News of the discovery had filtered through via phone calls and whispers among staff. The jurors sat forward, some with mouths slightly agape, as the implications of the basement findings began to sink in. Hale sat rigid, pale, realizing that every secret he had tried to hide was now laid bare before the law. Back in the basement, Daniels carefully placed each item into evidence bags. The sense of finality was tempered by the realization that the evidence alone was only part of the story. The testimony of Lily, corroborated by the presence of Rex and now validated by the physical evidence, created an irrefutable narrative. Hale's manipulation, control, and threats were documented in both human testimony and tangible proof. As they prepared to transport the items, Daniels paused, looking around the basement one last time. The dimly lit space, once a fortress of secrets and fear, now stood stripped bare. The shadow of Hale's power had been replaced by the clarity of truth. Lily's bravery and Rex's unwavering protection had illuminated the darkness that had once threatened to consume her. Rex walked beside Daniels as they ascended the stairs, alert and watchful. The sunlight streaming into the basement seemed almost symbolic. A new day, the revelation of truth, the promise of justice. Daniels knew that this was a moment that would define the case, a turning point that had been unimaginable months earlier. In the courtroom, the team returned, bringing with them the evidence carefully bagged and labeled. The jurors leaned forward, anticipation thick in the air. Hale's face had gone pale, his composure crumbling entirely. The evidence in those bags validated Lily's courage, her memory, and Rex's instincts. Every piece told the story of a predator who had been confident in secrecy, but who now faced exposure. Lily, sitting quietly beside her mother, watched as the evidence was presented. Her small hands gripped Rex's collar, her eyes wide but unshakable. She had been terrified, she had been manipulated, and she had survived. And now her courage was the foundation of justice. She whispered softly to Rex, "We did it. We found it." The dog nudged her hand, affirming their shared victory. Hale's attorney stammered, desperately trying to regain control. "Your Honor, this evidence." The judge's gavel came down sharply, silencing him. "The evidence speaks for itself. The jury will review it carefully. The witness has provided accurate and critical testimony corroborated by physical discovery." The courtroom was silent, every person present sensing the weight of the moment. The predator had been cornered, and the full extent of his deception, manipulation, and terror was now revealed. The jury, the spectators, the officers, and even the media understood that this was a decisive turning point, the moment when courage, loyalty, and truth triumphed over fear. Rex settled beside Lily, head resting on her lap, eyes alert. She stroked his fur, tears glimmering in her eyes, but a small, resolute smile on her face. Justice had begun to unfold, guided by a child's bravery and a dog's unwavering instincts. Hale had underestimated them both, and now the weight of the courtroom had transformed from a tense arena into a theater of revelation. Every eye was fixed on the evidence now displayed in the center, meticulously bagged and labeled by Officer Daniels and his team. Each piece told a story of manipulation, intimidation, and secret schemes, all meticulously orchestrated by Marcus Hale. Spectators whispered in disbelief, jurors leaned forward, some mouths agape, and even the seasoned reporters covering the case felt the weight of what had just been uncovered. The once composed predator now sat frozen, his eyes darting anxiously, jaw tight, as he watched the walls of his carefully constructed control crumble. Lily sat beside her mother, small fingers gripping Rex's fur, drawing comfort from the steady presence of her guardian. Though she was only 8, she understood that her bravery had changed the course of this trial. Her testimony had guided the authorities, leading them to the basement and revealing Hale's hidden secrets. She had survived his threats, and now the truth lay bare for everyone to see. The prosecutor approached, her voice firm but gentle. "Miss Carter, can you confirm that the items recovered from the basement were the things you saw him hiding?" Lily nodded, her lips trembling but her voice unwavering. "Yes, that's everything. That's what he tried to hide, the things that could hurt people. I saw it and now everyone knows." The room went silent. The jurors, who had been leaning forward intently, now sat in stunned absorption. The reality of the child's testimony, corroborated by physical evidence, had created a narrative so compelling it was almost cinematic in its clarity. Hale's attorney tried to interrupt, but the judge's gavel silenced him. "This is relevant, and the witness is allowed to testify about her observations." Hale's face was pale, eyes darting. The facade of confidence that had carried him through months of intimidation and control was gone. His palms sweated, fingers tightening around the arms of his chair. For the first time, the predator realized that fear and secrecy could not shield him from justice, especially not from a child backed by a loyal, fearless K-9. Officer Daniels stepped forward, presenting the trunk and its contents to the jury, explaining the significance of each item. "These are the documents, photographs, and devices the witness described. They show a pattern of deliberate threats, surveillance, and intimidation. They corroborate Miss Carter's testimony and reveal the scope of the defendant's actions." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Spectators whispered among themselves, cameras clicked, and the jurors exchanged incredulous glances. Hale's attorney opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The mounting evidence left him speechless, cornered. Lily's mother reached for her daughter's hand, squeezing it gently. "You're so brave, baby. I'm so proud of you," she whispered. Lily's small voice replied, barely audible but resolute. "I had Rex, I wasn't alone." The prosecutor nodded toward the dog, whose attentive eyes never left Hale. "Rex's presence was crucial," she said. "His instincts protected the witness, guided the authorities, and ensured that the evidence was discovered. Together, this child and her dog have revealed the truth." The courtroom gasped. The bond between Lily and Rex, so palpable and unbreakable, had become a central element of the case. It was more than bravery, it was proof that courage, loyalty, and instinct could overcome fear and manipulation. The jurors leaned closer, captivated by the narrative unfolding before them. Hale sat rigid, his face a mask of disbelief, realizing that every action, every threat, and every secret had been exposed. Then Lily spoke again, her voice clear and unwavering. "He tried to scare me, but he couldn't. He thought nobody would find out, but now everyone knows, and he won't hurt me or anyone else again." A stunned hush fell over the room. Spectators felt chills, reporters scribbled furiously, and jurors exchanged glances heavy with the weight of responsibility. Hale's attorney finally spoke, voice trembling. "Your Honor, this is emotional manipulation. The child's feelings are influencing the jury unfairly." The judge's gavel banged down. "Order! The jury is to consider the testimony and evidence objectively. The witness has provided factual accounts, corroborated by physical evidence recovered from the basement." Officer Daniels could see the strain on Hale's face. The reality of exposure had finally taken hold. Every lie, every attempt at control, every hidden act of intimidation was now laid bare. Hale's world, built on fear and secrecy, was collapsing. The courtroom could almost feel it, the silent unraveling of a man who had underestimated the courage of a child and the power of a dog's loyalty. The prosecutor moved closer to the jury, presenting the items again. Every piece of evidence, every document, photograph, and device shows the defendant's pattern. This is not speculation. This is fact, supported by witness testimony and recovered evidence. The jury must consider the full extent of these actions in determining accountability. A reporter whispered to a colleague, This is unlike anything I've ever covered. A child, a dog, and now tangible evidence. It's like a movie unfolding in real life." Hale's attorney attempted one final strategy. "Your Honor, the witness is a child. Her recollection could be flawed. There is no way she could accurately remember details months later." The judge fixed him with a stern gaze. "The testimony has been corroborated by physical evidence recovered from the defendant's property. The jury will weigh the credibility of the witness in context with the evidence." Lily, sensing the tension, stood slightly, clutching Rex's collar. "I remember," she said softly, but with a strength that carried across the room. "I remember everything he did. I wasn't wrong. Rex saw it too, and now everyone knows the truth." The room seemed to hold its breath. Hale's face twisted in a mixture of fury and fear. He realized, finally, that no threats, no manipulation, and no secrecy could undo what had been revealed. His attempts to control the narrative were gone, replaced by the undeniable courage of a child and the unerring instincts of a loyal dog. The jurors whispered among themselves, processing the evidence and testimony. They understood that what they were witnessing was extraordinary, a convergence of human bravery and canine instinct that had unearthed the truth. The prosecutor allowed a moment of pause, letting the impact of Lily's testimony and the evidence settle in the minds of everyone present. Then, with the courtroom silent, the prosecutor addressed the jury one last time. "You have heard the witness. You have seen the evidence. The truth has been revealed. The defendant's actions are documented, his threats and manipulation laid bare. This child has survived unimaginable fear, guided by the loyalty of her K9 protector. You now have the responsibility to ensure justice is served." The jurors nodded solemnly, the weight of responsibility clear in their expressions. Hale's attorney slumped back into his seat, defeated. Hale himself stared straight ahead, pale, realizing that exposure and accountability were inevitable. Lily knelt beside Rex, resting her head against his thick fur. "We did it," she whispered softly. Rex nudged her hand, a silent acknowledgement of the partnership that had carried them through months of fear, testimony, and now the revelation of truth. The courtroom remained tense, the air thick with suspense. Every spectator, every juror, every officer present knew that the moment of reckoning was near. Hale had been stripped of his control, cornered by courage, loyalty, and evidence that could not be disputed. The stage was set for the final verdict, the judgment that would seal the predator's fate and honor the bravery of the child and her dog who had refused to be silenced. The courtroom was hushed, an almost reverent silence enveloping every corner. The jurors had retired for deliberation hours ago, but the tension did not dissipate. Spectators leaned forward in anticipation. Reporters whispered into their microphones, and Hale sat rigid, his face pale and tight with anxiety. For the first time, the predator who had terrorized a child and sought to control everyone around him was entirely vulnerable. Every secret, every intimidation tactic, every hidden act of cruelty had been revealed. Now the final chapter awaited, the moment when truth and justice would meet. Lily sat quietly beside her mother, fingers gripping Rex's fur. The dog's head rested gently on her lap, eyes alert, almost knowing the gravity of the moment. Despite the hours of suspense and months of trauma, her gaze was steady, unflinching. She had endured fear and uncertainty, survived a predator's wrath, and faced the public courtroom with courage that seemed beyond her years. In her small hands, Rex's presence was not just comfort, it was a symbol of resilience and unwavering loyalty. Officer Daniels watched from the back of the courtroom, a subtle swell of pride rising in his chest. He remembered the first time he had carried Lily from that shattered house on Willow Lane, her tiny body trembling in terror. The memory of Rex barking and protecting her, guiding them both through danger, had never left him. Now, seeing the child standing strong, recounting the trauma with precision, and seeing the evidence validated, he realized that their bravery had rewritten the narrative entirely. The judge cleared his throat, the gavel in his hand reflecting the weight of authority. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you reached a verdict?" His voice was calm but carried an undeniable weight. Every head in the courtroom turned toward the jury box. The foreperson rose, holding the slip of paper that would determine the fate of Marcus Hale. The tension was suffocating, the moment suspended in time. "We have," the foreperson said, voice steady but solemn. Every eye in the courtroom followed, hearts pounding. The jurors had deliberated long and carefully, weighing the testimony, the evidence, and the courage of a child who had survived unimaginable fear. Hale's face twisted into a mask of anxiety, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. For the first time, he could do nothing but wait. The foreperson unfolded the paper and spoke clearly. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Marcus Hale, guilty on all counts." A collective gasp erupted. Spectators whispered frantically, reporters scribbled feverishly, and the courtroom seemed to vibrate with the magnitude of the announcement. Hale's jaw dropped, eyes wide, as reality crashed down on him. The carefully constructed world of control and fear he had relied upon for so long had collapsed. Justice, guided by courage and truth, had prevailed. Lily's mother pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, baby. You were so brave." Lily leaned against Rex, her small hand stroking his fur. "We did it," she whispered softly. The dog's warm head nudged her gently, acknowledging their shared triumph. In that moment, the room seemed to recognize that courage had triumphed over fear, and loyalty had guided truth to light. The prosecutor allowed a moment of pause before addressing the court. "The bravery of this child, supported by the vigilance of her K-9 protector, has ensured that justice has been served. The defendant's crimes have been exposed, and no further threats can silence the truth. Let this serve as a reminder that courage, even in its smallest form, has the power to confront evil." The courtroom remained silent for a heartbeat longer before a wave of quiet murmurs passed through the spectators. Hale's attorney sat slumped, defeated, unable to intervene. Hale himself stared straight ahead, pale and uncomprehending, trapped in the consequences of his actions. The predator had been stripped of power, reduced to a figure of exposure, forced to face the reality of the harm he had caused. Officer Daniels watched Hale being escorted from the courtroom, restrained and silent. The sight brought a sense of closure, but it also reminded him of the months of uncertainty, the long nights, and the moments of sheer fear that Lily and her family had endured. And through it all, Rex had remained vigilant, a steadfast presence that had guided and protected, ensuring that truth prevailed. Lily stood beside her mother as the courtroom slowly began to empty. Spectators offered quiet congratulations, reporters approached with gentle questions, and the officers present shared nods of respect. Lily's small stature belied the enormity of her courage. She had faced fear directly, spoken truthfully, and helped uncover evidence that would have remained hidden without her bravery. Her mother bent down, brushing tears from her daughter's face. "You've shown everyone what real courage looks like," she said softly. "Not many could have done what you did." Lily's voice, small but unwavering, responded, "Rex was with me. I wasn't alone, and he helped me remember." The dog nudged her gently, his warm presence a silent affirmation. Outside the courtroom, the press gathered, cameras flashing, capturing images of Lily and Rex standing side by side. Officers and supporters offered words of praise, but Lily remained composed, her eyes clear, reflecting both the trauma she had endured and the resilience she now embodied. The story of a child, a dog, and a predator had unfolded in real time, a dramatic confrontation of courage versus fear. Months later, Lily and her family moved forward, their lives forever changed but no longer overshadowed by Hale's threats. Counseling, community support, and the unwavering presence of Rex provided healing and stability. Lily continued to attend school, her bravery quietly inspiring peers and teachers alike. Rex remained at her side, no longer just a K-9 officer's partner but a guardian, friend, and symbol of loyalty and courage. Officer Daniels often visited, sharing quiet conversations and updates on Hale's incarceration. Each time he saw Lily, he was reminded of the extraordinary bond between the girl and her dog, and of the incredible courage that had ensured justice was served. He reflected on the truth that had emerged. Bravery and loyalty, even in the smallest form, could confront and dismantle the darkest of threats. The town gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy, but the story remained unforgettable, a tale of fear faced head-on, of truth revealed, and of an unbreakable bond between a child and a dog. It was a story shared across news outlets, social media, and community conversations, a story of survival, courage, and ultimate justice. And in the quiet of her home, Lily often looked down at Rex, kneeling beside him, whispering softly, "We did it, we made sure everyone knows." Rex rested his head against her lap, eyes warm and steady as if affirming, "Yes, we did, and we'll always be together." The predator was gone, justice had been served, and a young girl's bravery, anchored by the instincts of a loyal dog, had reminded the world that courage, truth, and loyalty were unstoppable forces. The courtroom drama had ended, but the story of survival, trust, and triumph would live on, inspiring all who heard it.